Some contracts are conditional. This means the obligations of the parties are suspended until some condition is met. For instance, in real estate, it's very common for the sale to be conditional on various searches to see, for instance, if the land floods. Usually, the conditional contract includes a date by which the condition must be satisfied or the deal's off. But what if there is no date? That was the situation in Perri against Coolangatta Investments. The Perrys were buying a house in Sydney. They were also selling a house. The new purchase contract included a clause that said this contract is entered into subject to the purchasers completing a sale of their property, number 9 Corocan Road, Lillypilly. See the problem? There's no date. What if it took them 10 years? Was Coolangatta Investments just supposed to hang around and wait? To make matters worse, Mr. Perri listed the house for a very high price and resisted suggestions that he lower the price to a more realistic level. 4 months later, the contract was still sitting there waiting, and Coolangatta Investments had had enough. They terminated the contract. The question before the court was whether they had the right to do so. The Perrys hadn't missed any deadline. The contract didn't contain one. They eventually sold the house after a full year had elapsed. Could they enforce the contract? The court said that if there was no time specified, then the condition must be fulfilled within a reasonable time. Justice Brennan said, the interests of both parties in resolving their respective contingent obligations under the contract require that a limit be placed upon the time during which the contingency should occur. A reasonable time is implied in the absence of indications to the contrary. But that leaves us to ask, what's a reasonable time? Justice Brennan again. What is a reasonable time is a question of fact and depends on the circumstances. Its limit is determined by reference to what is fair for both parties. The court found that Coolangatta Investments had waited a reasonable time and that the Perrys had only themselves to blame for the loss of the contract. From this case, we learn that if a contract is subject to a condition and there's no specific deadline, the condition must be completed within a reasonable time, a time that is fair to both sides.